Have you ever encountered someone who walks through life with an unshakable stillness, as if they've decoded a secret the rest of us are still searching for? They aren't necessarily the loudest in the room, or the wealthiest, or the most celebrated by the world's standards. Yet they possess a gravity, a quiet authority that makes you take notice. They don't beg for understanding. They don't justify their existence. The storms of the world seem to pass right through them without leaving a trace. This isn't a personality quirk or a stroke of good fortune. This is the undeniable result of a mind that has been reclaimed. This is what surfaces when a person dares to think for themselves. The great Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus held that philosophy is nothing more than the pursuit of becoming a better human being. And that pursuit begins and ends within the fortress of your own mind. The instant you cease allowing external voices to narrate your life, the entire landscape of your reality begins to shift. The foundations tremble. The old maps become useless. You see, most of us are living lives that were pre-approved. We didn't craft them, we inherited them. A pre-packaged blueprint for what constitutes a win, what love should feel like, what we're supposed to desire, who we're expected to become. We pour our years into constructing an existence that earns a gold star from the onlookers, yet feels like an echo in our own chests. Then, inevitably, a crack appears. Perhaps it's a sudden loss. Perhaps it's a bone-deep exhaustion. Perhaps it's a simple, silent moment where you catch your reflection and don't recognize the person staring back. And in that stillness, a question ignites. A question that has the power to level everything you've built. What if I stopped performing the life that's expected of me and started living the life that actually feels like mine? That question is the most dangerous force in the universe because once it's asked, you can never pretend. You don't know the answer. This isn't a call to tear everything down. It's not a rebellion against the world. It's a homecoming to the truth that your consciousness is your own. Your existence is your own, and no proxy can experience it for you. What follows are the authentic internal revolutions that take hold when you seize back the reins of your own thought. These aren't abstract concepts. These are the tangible metamorphoses you will undergo. If you feel the pull to reclaim your mental territory, write this in the comments. My mind is my own kingdom. Let's begin. Number 1, you shatter the hypnotic trance of automatic living. There exists a version of you that operates on a pre-recorded loop. The alarm sounds, the routine commences, the predictable reactions fire. You dodge the same fears, you settle for the same comforts, you make the same choices, never pausing to ask if this path still leads anywhere you actually want to go. That version isn't truly living, it's merely repeating a worn-out tape. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius advised us to confine yourself to the present moment, but you cannot inhabit the present when you're sleepwalking through it. You aren't there. You're running obsolete code, following a script you didn't write, trapped in a cycle you never consciously authorized. The vast majority of humanity spends its entire tenure on Earth this way. They are reaction machines, not conscious responders. They are marionettes dancing to strings attached long ago, in childhood, in moments of pain, in decisions made for them by people they've long forgotten. And they remain baffled as to why their lives feel like a rerun. When you begin the work of independent thought, the first thing to dissolve is this automation. You start to catch yourself mid-script. A moment of pause appears before the habitual response. You see the pattern before it completes its circuit. Imagine someone hurls an insult your way. The old you might have crumbled or erupted or bent over backwards to soothe the tension. That's the autopilot. But the awakened mind, it stops, it breathes, it inquires. Is there truth in this? Is there value? Or is this simply another person's inner turmoil seeking a place to land? And in that instant, you are no longer a puppet of the moment. You are within it, but not enslaved by it. Here's the core truth most miss. The trance feels safe. It's the known path. You can predict the turns because you've taken them 1,000 times. But safety is not synonymous with serenity, and predictability is not synonymous with purpose. Living on autopilot means you're playing a part. You're the responsible one, the rock, the peacemaker, the workhorse. You've worn the costume for so long, you forgot it was ever a choice. You forgot you had the power to take it off. When you break the trance, you strip away the performance. You stop pretending the cracks aren't there. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that deplete you, simply because your past self always occupied them. You stop uttering a yes when every fiber of your being screams no, and the world around you takes notice. They often won't like it. Your old autopilot was convenient for them. It made you reliable, easy to steer, unthreatening. When you wake up, you become an unknown quantity, and that disrupts the entire ecosystem. But remember this, you were not placed on this earth to be a convenient fixture in someone else's story. You were placed here to be vibrantly, fully alive. And you cannot be that while running software designed by a committee you never joined. Waking up is jarring. It forces you to confront all the ways you've been hiding, the ways you've shrunk yourself to fit, the ways you've abandoned your own needs to preserve an artificial peace. But once you're awake, once you begin to consciously author your responses instead of defaulting to the script, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a passenger. You are the pilot. And yes, you may encounter turbulence. You might make errors in judgment, but they will be your errors. They will be the tuition for a life that is authentically yours, not a pale imitation of someone else's expectations. If you're ready to wake up, affirm it. I choose with open eyes. Number 2, you begin to see the invisible architecture of your own mind. Here's an uncomfortable reality. The vast majority of what you hold as truth was never yours. You didn't sit in contemplative silence one day and meticulously construct your values, your anxieties, your definitions of right and wrong. They were installed like foundational software before you had the awareness to question it. Your family uploaded certain programs. Your culture installed more. Every figure of authority, every institution, every voice that spoke with unwavering certainty, they all left their digital fingerprints on the architecture of your brain. And you accepted it because you didn't realize you had a firewall, let alone an administrator password. Seneca observed, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." The majority of your fears are not rooted in your own lived experience. They are warnings you downloaded, stories you absorbed, dangers amplified to keep you safely within the lines. When you begin to think for yourself, you see the code. You recognize the programming, and once you see it, the illusion is shattered. Let's be specific. You hold beliefs about money. Where did they originate? Did you test them against reality, or did you simply inherit them from people who lived in scarcity, fear, or resentment? You hold beliefs about your own capabilities. Are they based on evidence, or are they echoes of a throwaway comment from a second-grade teacher, a weary sigh from a parent, a cruel word from a former partner? You hold beliefs about what makes you worthy of love, respect, belonging. Did you choose those metrics, or were they imposed by a culture that thrives on your insecurity? This is the code, and it runs in the background. The frightening part is that you defend it, even as it limits you, even as it causes you pain, because it is familiar. To dismantle it feels like dismantling the self. But you are not the code. You are the observer, the consciousness that can witness the code, question its purpose, and decide whether to keep it running or delete it permanently. When you recognize this mental architecture, you stop accepting your thoughts as gospel. You stop assuming that a passing thought is an eternal truth. You start to ask better questions. Where did this belief come from? Who benefits from my compliance with it? Does this thought serve my growth or keep me shackled to my past? This is where genuine liberation begins, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. But once you perceive the invisible chains, you have the power to break them. You'll start to notice the programming everywhere, in the guilt you feel for resting, in the shame that accompanies wanting more, in the panic that arises when you consider disappointing someone. None of this is innate. It is learned, and it can be unlearned. This doesn't mean you must reject everything you were taught. Some lessons are wisdom, passed down through generations. Some beliefs are shields that protect you. But you must sort through the noise. You must become the vigilant gatekeeper of your own consciousness. People will resist your awakening. When you begin to question the shared hallucinations, you make others uncomfortable. Because if you can rewrite your own code, it means they could too, and most people are terrified of that responsibility. But that fear is not yours to carry. Your only task is to stop living a life constructed from someone else's fears, and you simply cannot do that anymore, not once you've glimpsed the truth. If you're ready to audit your own mind, type this: I choose beliefs that empower me. Number 3. You develop an immunity to the subtle arts of control. There is a reason why truly independent thinkers are a threat to every flawed system, because you cannot govern someone who questions the premise of your authority. You cannot exploit someone who understands the mechanics of exploitation. You cannot burden with guilt someone who has untangled their self-worth from your approval. When you start thinking for yourself, you become inoculated against the tactics that once worked flawlessly. The emotional blackmail, the false urgency, the fear-driven sales pitches, the social pressure disguised as concern. Epictetus taught that it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. And the master manipulator banks on you thinking you already know yourself, when in reality you're a stranger to your own depths. Most manipulation isn't a neon sign. It arrives wrapped in concern, in tradition, in the phrase, "I'm only saying this because I love you." It comes from people who genuinely, perhaps, believe they have a better map for your life than you do. And when you were sleepwalking, when you hadn't inspected the code, that manipulation worked. You lacked an internal compass, so you let others navigate for you. But when you start thinking for yourself, everything pivots. You develop what can only be called an internal gyroscope, a sense of orientation that doesn't wobble based on who is speaking or how loudly or how much they try to make you feel indebted. You start to see the strings. Someone tells you that everyone is doing it, and instead of feeling the pang of being left out, you calmly ask yourself if everyone's destination is anywhere you wish to go. Someone declares, "You owe me this." And instead of buckling under the weight of obligation, you examine the ledger. Is this debt real, or is it an emotional "I owe you" written on a napkin years ago? Someone tries to rush you into a decision, citing a limited time opportunity, and instead of panic, you slow down because you now recognize that urgency is often a tool of the con artist. If something is genuinely right for you, it will still be right for you tomorrow. It will not demand you surrender your discernment to obtain it. Here's a layer they don't teach you. The most potent manipulation often comes from those who genuinely love you. From parents who want you to stay small because your growth threatens their worldview. From friends who need you to remain stuck because your progress illuminates their stagnation. From partners who depend on your dependency because your strength challenges their control. They don't perceive it as manipulation. They see it as protection, as guidance, as love. And perhaps, in part, it is. But any love that requires you to amputate parts of your soul to receive it is not love. It's control wearing a compassionate mask. When you become harder to manipulate, your relationships will recalibrate. Some people will become uncomfortable. They won't like the new boundaries. They won't understand the calm no without a 20-minute explanation. They'll accuse you of being selfish, of changing, of becoming cold. And they'll be right about one thing: you have changed. You've stopped abandoning yourself to maintain their comfort. And if that feels like a loss to them, it reveals everything about what they truly valued in the connection. But here's the elegance of this shift. When you stop being easily steered, you begin to attract a different caliber of people. People who honor your boundaries, people who celebrate your autonomy, people who don't need you to be weak to feel strong. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer made in the crucible of fear of rejection or hunger for approval. They are made from alignment. Does this resonate with my values? Does this respect my truth? Does this move me toward the existence I actually want? And when the answer is no, you walk away. Not with fury, not with a scene, just with a quiet, immovable clarity, because your peace is worth infinitely more than their persuasion. Becoming immune to manipulation doesn't mean becoming cold and unfeeling. It means becoming solid, grounded, unshakable in your core while remaining flexible in your methods. It means understanding the difference between having an open mind and laying out a welcome mat for anyone to walk all over you. If you refuse to be a pawn any longer, declare this: I trust my own inner knowing. Number 4, your decisions become anchored to your deepest values, not the currency of external validation. Here's a question designed to unsettle you. If there was absolutely no one watching, no one to praise you, no one to judge you, no one who would ever even know, would you still be making the choices you're making today? Would you still be on this same trajectory? For most people, the honest answer would drop like a stone in their stomach, because they aren't living their values. They are performing for an invisible jury, making decisions engineered to collect applause, deflect criticism, or uphold a facade that stopped fitting them years ago. Seneca reminds us, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. But you can't set sail for your own port if you're too busy trying to dock at everyone else's. You can't live by your values if you haven't excavated them from the rubble of other people's expectations. When you start thinking for yourself, you cease outsourcing the most critical decisions of your existence. You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what do I truly believe is the right move here? This is harder than it sounds because we are neurologically wired for belonging. For our ancestors, ejection from the tribe was a death sentence. So we learned to adapt, to shapeshift, to bury our authentic responses if they threatened our place in the group. But we are not living on the savannah anymore. Being true to yourself might cost you some likes, some invitations, some approval. It might get you labeled as different, but it won't kill you. Living a lie, however, may not kill the body, but it will slowly, systematically asphyxiate the spirit until you can no longer find yourself in the reflection. Making decisions based on values requires you to actually know what your values are, not the ones you were told to have, but the ones that resonate in your core. And that requires radical honesty with yourself. Do you value security more than growth? Comfort more than truth? Harmony more than authenticity? There is no universal right answer, but there is your answer. And it may differ wildly from your father's answer, your culture's answer, your partner's answer. And that is not only okay, that is the entire point. Let's ground this in reality. Perhaps you're tethered to a career that is slowly eroding your will to live, because abandoning it would disappoint those who invested in your education or cheered for your success. That's approval-based living. A values-based decision asks, what do I actually want my contribution to be? What legacy feels meaningful to me? What would I do if I only had a decade left of health and energy? Perhaps you're in a relationship that looks flawless from the outside but feels hollow in the quiet moments. Approval-based thinking tells you to stay, don't be the one who dismantles a good thing. Values-based thinking asks, do I feel genuinely seen here? Do I feel safe to evolve? Can I bring my full, unedited self into this space? Perhaps you say yes to every request because no feels like a character flaw. Approval-based living. Values-based living asks, is this aligned with my finite reserves of time and energy? Does this feed my purpose or just my guilt? When you start making these anchored decisions, the questions will come. People will tell you you're making a mistake, being impulsive, naive, selfish. Sometimes their concern is genuine, but often it's just the discomfort of watching someone deviate from a script they are still heavily invested in. You can listen, you can consider their perspective, but ultimately you are the one who must live inside the consequences of your choices. And you cannot survive choices that violate your core being just to keep the audience comfortable. Values-based living also means you'll make some unpopular calls. You'll decline opportunities that look golden on paper but feel leaden in your gut. You'll step away from relationships that function perfectly but nourish nothing. You'll disappoint people who had a different vision for your path. That is the price of admission to your own life. But the alternative, living someone else's idea of a good life, while your own existence slips through your fingers, carries a cost that is infinitely steeper. Here's the liberation in this. When your decisions are value-anchored, you stop the endless second-guessing. You stop lying awake wondering if you made the right call. Because even if the path is hard, even if it doesn't lead where you hoped, you know it was true to who you are, and that alignment brings a peace that external approval never could. If you're ready to choose yourself over the crowd, write this: I choose values over validation. Number 5, you befriend the territory of standing alone. There will arrive a moment when your truth leads you into solitude. When the path you must walk diverges so completely from the highway everyone else is on that you can no longer pretend the destinations are the same. When your growth requires you to outgrow relationships, environments, and even versions of yourself that others still need you to be. In that moment, a choice presents itself. Do I shrink to preserve the connection, or do I stand alone in the authority of my own truth? The philosopher Heraclitus observed that the path up and down are one and the same. The journey inward is often a solitary one. Part of truly living in the present is accepting that your path is yours alone to walk. No one can take the steps for you. No one can validate each footfall. You must become your own source of permission. Most people never develop this capacity. They need a consensus. They need a companion to go first. They need a guarantee of safety before they take a step. And so they remain stationary, waiting for a permission slip that will never be signed. When you begin to think for yourself, you realize that the crowd's direction is not automatically the right direction. You see that popularity is not a metric for truth, and you make peace with that. You become comfortable being the only one in the room who sees what you see, the only one who values what you value, the only one willing to walk a path with no footprints. This doesn't mean you become a hermit or reject all companionship. It doesn't mean you become arrogant or isolated by design. It means you no longer need others to agree with you in order to trust yourself. You can have people in your life who don't comprehend your choices and still love them deeply. You can receive counsel and still make a different decision. You can be part of a community without conforming to every single one of its beliefs. But you must be willing to stand alone when the moment requires it. And that is the part most people cannot stomach, because standing alone is uncomfortable. It resurrects every childhood fear of not being chosen, every adolescent dread of being different, every adult anxiety of being left behind. But here's what standing alone teaches you. You are enough. Just you, without the backup singers, without the validation, without the cheering section. You, in your truth, making choices aligned with your deepest self. That is enough. You also learn with crystal clarity who your real people are. Some only want you when you're easy, agreeable, non-threatening. But those who genuinely love you will respect your path, even when they can't see the destination. Standing alone also sharpens your instincts. When you're accustomed to moving with the herd, your internal navigation system atrophies. But when you walk alone, when the choices rest entirely on your shoulders, you learn to trust your gut, to read the subtle signs, to know in your bones what is right for you. And over time, something remarkable happens. The loneliness of solitude transforms into the freedom of authentic self-expression. You're no longer performing, no longer contorting yourself to fit into spaces not designed for you. You are simply, fully, unapologetically being. And it is in that authenticity, in that solitary strength, that the right people, the aligned opportunities, the true connections will find you. If you're willing to stand alone for what is true, commit with this. I stand firm in my own truth. Number 6, you become the sovereign of your emotional landscape. The average person is a puppet of their passing feelings. Something happens and they react. Someone speaks and they explode. A memory surfaces and they are pulled under. They genuinely believe their emotions are in control, that a feeling is a fact, that if they experience it, they must act on it. But when you begin to think for yourself, you uncover a profound truth. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness that experiences them. And there is a universe of difference between those two states. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your emotions are not outside events. They are internal weather patterns. And while you cannot control when a storm arrives, you have absolute authority over how you respond to it. This is one of the most liberating realizations of a human life. For years, you may have been told to follow your heart and trust your feelings, but feelings can be deceptive. They are shaped by old wounds, unmet needs, distorted perceptions, and the intricate chemistry of your brain. They are valuable data, but they are not infallible commanders. When you develop the capacity to observe your emotions without being commandeered by them, you become unshakable. Someone directs anger at you, and instead of crumbling or counterattacking, you pause. You feel the heat of the emotion rise. You acknowledge it, and then you choose your response. Maybe you address it with clarity. Maybe you disengage. Maybe you realize it reveals more about them than you, and you let it dissolve. That is power, not power over others, but the far more significant power of self-governance. Here's what most miss. Emotional mastery is not about suppression. It's not about pretending you don't feel what you feel or forcing a smile when you're breaking apart. That's spiritual bypassing, and it's just as destructive as emotional chaos. True mastery is about creating a sacred pause between stimulus and response. It's about feeling the full weight of the emotion, the rage, the fear, the sorrow, acknowledging it, understanding its source, and then consciously deciding what to do with it. You feel rage. Good. Feel it. Let the energy move through you. But do not let it author your emails, your texts, your critical conversations. Do not let it burn down structures you've built with care simply because you are hurting. You feel fear. Acknowledge it. Ask it what it's trying to protect you from. Sometimes it's a legitimate warning. Sometimes it's just an echo of an ancient trauma. You must learn to discern. And then you move forward anyway, with the fear, but not controlled by it. You feel sadness. Allow yourself to grieve. Let the tears come. Sit in the weight of it. But do not let it convince you that joy is a myth, that healing is impossible, that the future will be a monotone replay of this pain. This level of emotional intelligence transforms everything. Your relationships heal because you're no longer reacting from your unprocessed wounds. You're responding from your gathered wisdom. You're not punishing people for triggering you. You're taking ownership of your own healing. Your decisions improve because they're not made in the fever of an emotional spike. You're not rage quitting your job, or making promises in a manic high, or avoiding necessary conversations because you're scared. You wait for clarity, for groundedness, for alignment. Your self-respect deepens because you're no longer betraying yourself in moments of intensity. You're not saying things you'll regret, not making choices that violate your values, not letting temporary feelings create permanent wreckage. People will test this new version of you. They'll push the old buttons, expecting the old explosion. And when you remain centered, when you don't react, they won't know what to do. Some will respect you more. Some will escalate. Some will accuse you of being fake or cold or not yourself. But you'll know the truth. You are more yourself than you've ever been. You're no longer a slave to every emotional wave. You are the captain of your own vessel, and that is when you become truly free. If you're ready to govern your inner world, affirm this: I feel deeply and I choose wisely. Number 7, you burn the old scoreboard and redefine what winning actually means. The world sells you a very specific image of success. The corner office, the impressive title, the portfolio, the relationship status, the list of achievements you're supposed to check off by certain birthdays. And if you haven't collected them, the narrative says you're falling behind, you're failing, you're wasting your potential. But when you start thinking for yourself, you see this for what it is, a mass hallucination. You realize you don't have to buy a ticket to that show. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." True success isn't an accumulation of things. It's alignment with your own soul. It's building a life that feels true to you, not one that simply looks impressive to them. The tragedy is that most people are sprinting after a version of success they don't even secretly want. They want the promotion because it proves something. They want the luxury car because it signals something. They want the curated life because it performs something. But inside, they're hollow, exhausted, wondering why the trophy feels so empty once it's in their hands. That's because they've been climbing a ladder propped against the wrong building, and no amount of effort will change the fact that they're heading somewhere they never intended to go. When you redefine success on your own terms, you stop competing in games you never agreed to play. You stop measuring yourself against people who have entirely different values, resources, and definitions of fulfillment. You start asking the real questions. What does a successful life actually mean to me? Not to my father, not to my industry, not to the algorithm, to me. What kind of morning do I want to wake up to? What kind of work do I want to pour my energy into? What kind of connections do I want to cultivate? What kind of human being do I want to become? And your answers might surprise you. Maybe success for you isn't a massive income. Maybe it's freedom. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's creating something meaningful, even if it never makes you rich. Maybe it's deep, authentic relationships over a wide but shallow network. Maybe it's a life of adventure over one of stability. There is no universal definition, and pretending there is will keep you trapped in someone else's dream while your own life quietly evaporates. Redefining success also means releasing the tyranny of timelines. Society tells you when you should have achieved what. Graduate by this age, marry by that age, buy a home by this age, retire by that age. But your life is not a train schedule. It's a unique, unfolding journey. Forcing yourself onto someone else's timetable creates needless suffering. You are allowed to be a late bloomer. You are allowed to change directions at 40. You are allowed to start from scratch at 50. You are allowed to build slowly, deliberately, instead of chasing exponential growth. You are allowed to choose depth over speed. When you redefine success, you also redefine failure, because failure is simply not meeting someone else's standard. And if their standards aren't yours, their definition of failure is irrelevant. You didn't get the promotion? Perhaps that role would have consumed your soul. Maybe this is a redirection, not a rejection. Your business didn't explode overnight? Maybe slow, sustainable growth is actually more aligned with your need for sanity and balance. Your life doesn't resemble theirs? Good, it's not supposed to. Here's the uncomfortable part of this shift. When you redefine success, people will judge you. They'll think you've lost your ambition, that you're not serious, that you're wasting your potential, and you must become okay with that. Their judgment is based on their scoreboard, not yours. Your family might not understand why you left stability for uncertainty. Your peers might not get why you're not chasing the same markers. Strangers might look at your choices and think you're playing small. Let them. Your success is not a performance for their validation. It's a private, sacred alignment between your values and your reality, and only you can measure that. The freedom this brings is unparalleled. When you are no longer a slave to external definitions, you stop hustling for applause. You stop sacrificing your well-being for status. You stop betraying your values for a photo op. You build a life that might not impress anyone at a cocktail party, but that fills you with a quiet, profound sense of fulfillment. And that is the only success that actually matters. If you're ready to play by your own rules, declare this: I choose peace over applause. Number 8, you upgrade the questions you ask yourself. The quality of your existence is determined by the quality of the questions you repeatedly ask. Most people are experts at asking terrible questions. Why does this always happen to me? Why am I not good enough? What's wrong with me? These inquiries lead nowhere constructive. They simply reinforce a narrative of victimhood and helplessness. But when you start thinking for yourself, your internal questions evolve. They transform from weapons of self-sabotage into tools for excavation and growth. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And most of that imaginary suffering is generated by asking the wrong questions. Questions that assume the worst, that reinforce limiting beliefs, that keep you shackled to patterns you claim you want to break. Better questions create better realities. Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" you ask, "What pattern am I participating in that creates this outcome?" Instead of, "Why am I not good enough?" you ask, "Whose standard of good enough am I using, and do I even agree with it?" Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What is this situation trying to teach me? What would serve me better here?" Do you see the difference? The first set of questions slams doors. The second set opens them. When you ask better questions, you gain clarity. You stop spinning in confusion and start moving toward understanding. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming a student of your own life. Better questions also illuminate your relationships. Instead of, "Why don't they love me the way I need?" you ask, "Have I clearly communicated my needs? Is this relationship actually aligned with my values?" Instead of, "Why do they always do this?" you ask, "What boundary have I failed to establish or maintain?" These questions return power to your hands. They move you from complaint to agency. Better questions also reframe your approach to obstacles. Most people ask, "How can I avoid this problem?" But a thinker asks, "What is this problem revealing to me? How might this obstacle be redirecting me toward something better?" Most people ask, "What if I fail?" But a thinker asks, "What if I succeed?" Or even better, "What will I learn regardless of the outcome?" Most people ask, "Is this the right decision?" But a thinker asks, Which decision feels most aligned with the person I am becoming? The questions you pose to yourself sculpt your internal dialogue. Your internal dialogue shapes your beliefs. Your beliefs drive your actions, and your actions determine the course of your life. So, if your life isn't where you want it to be, start by auditing your questions. What are you asking yourself on a daily basis? Are those questions building you up or tearing you down? Better questions also help you filter the noise. When faced with advice, instead of, "Should I take this advice?" ask, "Does this person have results or wisdom I respect? Do they understand my unique context? Are they projecting their own fears onto my situation?" When faced with an opportunity, instead of, "Is this a good opportunity?" ask, "Is this aligned with my values? Does it move me toward my vision? Am I saying yes out of genuine excitement or fear of missing out?" When faced with self-doubt, instead of, "Can I do this?" ask, "Who do I need to become in order to do this? What is the smallest, most immediate step I can take?" Questions are the navigational instruments of the mind. Most people are trying to sail with a broken compass, wondering why they're lost. When you start asking better questions, you stop searching for easy answers because you realize that the right questions are far more valuable than quick answers. The right questions guide you toward wisdom. Quick answers just offer temporary comfort, and comfort is vastly overrated. Growth, real growth, is where life reveals its meaning. If you're ready to elevate your internal inquiry, write this: "I ask questions that empower me." Number 9, you forge the steel of mental discipline. Here's a truth that many resist. Your mind, left untrained, is a wild thing. It will sprint after every distraction. It will replay old wounds on a loop. It will catastrophize every unknown. It will convince you of falsehoods and talk you out of truths. Most people live at the mercy of this untamed mind. Whatever thought appears, they believe. Whatever narrative their brain constructs, they accept as reality. They let their mind drag them into the graveyard of the past, or hurl them into imagined future disasters, rarely spending any time in the only moment that actually exists, right now. But when you start thinking for yourself, you realize that your mind is a tool. And like any tool, it must be sharpened, directed, and sometimes set down when it's not serving you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And quality requires discipline. Mental discipline is the ability to direct your attention with intention, to choose what you focus on, rather than letting your focus be hijacked by whatever is loudest, brightest, or most alarming. It is the ability to interrupt destructive thought patterns and consciously redirect them towards something useful. This is not easy. Your brain has been running wild for years. It has carved deep neural canyons through repetition, worry, self-criticism, resentment, comparison. These thoughts don't need an invitation anymore. They just show up. Mental discipline is about carving new pathways, building new defaults, and that requires repetition, patience, and an unwavering commitment. Let's be clear about what mental discipline is not. It is not toxic positivity. It is not pretending everything is wonderful when your world is crumbling. It is not suppressing difficult emotions or forcing artificial cheerfulness. Mental discipline is about sovereignty. It's about refusing to let your mind run wild with stories that aren't true. It's about catching yourself mid-spiral and asking, is this thought helping me? Is it accurate? Is it useful? Or is this just my fear doing what fear does? It's about recognizing when you're ruminating, chewing on the same problem over and over without resolution, and choosing to redirect. Not because the problem isn't real, but because rumination doesn't solve problems. Action does, or acceptance does. But rumination, it just keeps you stuck. Mental discipline also means guarding what you consume. Your mind is not separate from what you feed it. If you constantly consume outrage, negativity, fear-mongering, comparison, superficiality, that becomes your mental diet. And you cannot expect clarity and peace while feeding your mind poison. You become selective, protective. You stop letting just anything into your mental space. You curate your inputs as carefully as you would curate your physical diet if you truly valued your health. This also means being ruthless with your inner voice. Most people speak to themselves in ways they would never tolerate from another human being. Constant criticism, harsh judgments, impossible standards, and then they wonder why they feel anxious and depressed. Mental discipline is catching that voice and challenging it. Would I say this to someone I deeply love? Is this voice even mine, or is it an echo of someone who hurt me? Is this thought building me up or tearing me down? And then choosing a different voice, not a fake saccharine voice, not a forced affirmation you don't believe, but a truthful, compassionate, constructive voice. The voice of someone who genuinely wants you to grow, not someone who wants you to suffer. Here's what happens when you develop mental discipline. You stop being at the mercy of your moods. You have difficult days, but they don't derail your entire week. You have anxious thoughts, but you don't let them dictate your decisions. You have painful memories, but you don't let them define your future. You become stable, grounded. People around you will notice. They'll wonder how you stay so calm, how you avoid being swept up in drama, how you seem so centered even when everything around you is chaos. It's not because you don't feel things. It's because you've trained your mind not to amplify them, not to spiral. You've learned to observe, process, and respond instead of react. Mental discipline also creates space for insight and creativity. When your mind isn't cluttered with noise, there's room for something deeper to emerge. Solutions you couldn't see before, perspectives that shift everything, moments of clarity that feel like grace. But you only get there through practice, through daily commitment to training your mind like you'd train your body, through meditation, journaling, conscious breathing, deliberate focus, intentional rest. The tools are many. The choice is yours. The undisciplined mind is a prison. The disciplined mind is a sanctuary, and you get to choose which one you inhabit. If you're ready to forge that strength, commit with this. I am the master of my mind. Number 10, you finally accept the title deed to your own existence. This is the convergence point. All the previous shifts flow into this one. Fundamental, non-negotiable truth. Your life is yours, not your parents', not your partner's, not your employer's, not society's, yours. And when you fully, completely accept that, when you stop waiting for permission, stop pointing fingers at circumstances, stop outsourcing responsibility, you step into a dimension of power that most people never even glimpse. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And most people are not masters of themselves. They are renters in their own lives, living according to terms and conditions they never read, making payments on a lease signed by someone who came before them. But when you start thinking for yourself, you finally claim the deed. You take ownership, full, complete, and sometimes terrifying ownership. This means accepting that everything in your life, where you are, who you're with, what you do, how you feel about it, is the result of your choices. Not entirely. Life will throw things at you that you didn't choose. Loss, illness, betrayal, injustice. You don't control those events, but you control your response, always. And your response determines your trajectory. Reclaiming ownership means you stop saying, "I have to." You stop saying, "I can't," because you stop saying, "someday when." You start saying, "I choose to," or "I choose not to," even when the choice is between two difficult paths, because the moment you accept that you are choosing, even if you're choosing the lesser of two hardships, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a victim. You are a participant. Let's be honest, this level of ownership is uncomfortable. It's far easier to blame, to point outward, to say your life is the way it is because of what they did, what happened, what you didn't get, how it wasn't fair. And some of that may be undeniably true. Life isn't fair. You may have been dealt a brutal hand. You may have been hurt in ways that were absolutely not your fault. But here's the hard, liberating truth. It's still your life to live, and you can spend it demanding justice for the past, or you can spend it building something meaningful in the present. You cannot do both with full energy. Reclaiming ownership also means accepting that no one is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your therapist, not some future perfected version of you who magically has all the answers. You are the one. Right now, with all your flaws and fears and limitations, you are the one who has to do the work, make the changes, have the hard conversations, set the boundaries, take the risks, and that is terrifying. What if you fail? What if you're not capable? What if you try and it doesn't work out? Those fears are real, but they are not a reason to abdicate, because consider the alternative. You hand your life over to others. You let them decide. You play it safe. You stay small. And one day, you wake up at 70 and realize you never actually lived. You just survived. You just complied. You just existed in the margins of someone else's story. That is the real risk. Not trying and failing. Not trying at all. When you reclaim ownership, you also reclaim your mistakes. You stop defending them. Stop justifying them. You simply own them. I made that choice. It didn't work out. I learned from it. I'm making a different choice now. That kind of accountability is rare. Most people will perform mental gymnastics to avoid admitting they were wrong. But you know that admitting you were wrong is how you become right. It's how you grow. You also stop waiting for ideal conditions, for the perfect moment for all your ducks to be in a row. You realize that life is messy, and if you wait for perfect, you'll wait forever. So you start, imperfectly, scared, uncertain, but you start, because ownership isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to find them out as you go. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you take full ownership of your life, the moment you stop needing anyone to rescue you, validate you, or complete you, that is the moment you become truly free. Free to love without desperation. Free to work without needing it to define you. Free to fail without it destroying you. Free to succeed without it inflating you. You become whole, not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally, fully, unapologetically in the driver's seat of your own existence. And nothing, no achievement, no relationship, no external validation will ever feel as profoundly good as that. If you are ready to claim the title deed to your life, type these powerful words: I own my life completely. So there you have it. 10 profound shifts that occur when you dare to think for yourself. This isn't theory or philosophy for the bookshelf. These are real internal transformations that will reshape every aspect of your being. You will break the trance of automatic living. You will see the hidden architecture of your mind. You will become immune to manipulation. You will anchor your choices in your own values, not the world's approval. You will find the strength to stand alone. You will govern your emotional world. You will redefine what success means for you. You will ask questions that unlock your potential. You will forge unshakable mental discipline, and you will finally, fully reclaim ownership of your own existence. But here is the crucial piece you must understand. Knowing this changes nothing. Only doing it does. Only living it does. Only summoning the courage to apply these truths to your actual, messy, complicated life that is what creates genuine transformation. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." So stop theorizing about the life you want to live. Stop preparing to start. Stop waiting for a permission slip that will never come. Think for yourself. Choose for yourself. Live for yourself. This world desperately needs people who are awake, people who are sovereign, people who refuse to be controlled, manipulated, or diminished. Be one of those people. If this message resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway. I read them. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, subscribe to Stoic Mindset Mastery for more content that challenges you to become who you are truly meant to be. Your life is waiting. Go claim it. If this message awakened something in you, seal it by commenting, "I think for myself."